His kiss deepened as I melted, then the phone buzzed. He's just for show, betray him now. I yanked back, chest heaving, staring at Jake's glowing screen while the Brooklyn rooftop party noise blurred into static. The city lights of New York glittered like they always did on our anniversary nights, but everything inside me cracked open in a single heartbeat. Jake, my Jake, the man who had held me through every late-night panic attack, the lawyer who quoted poetry while we cooked pasta in our tiny Williamsburg apartment, blinked like nothing had happened. "Ethan? Babe, you okay?" His voice was velvet, practiced. I couldn't speak. My thumb had already swiped the notification before I could stop myself. The full thread loaded. Months of messages to someone named K. Keep stringing the rich kid along. Family money clears escrow next month. Then ghost. I dropped the phone like it burned. Jake lunged, but I was already backing toward the railing, wind whipping my shirt. 2 years. 2 years of Sunday brunches in Prospect Park, of him introducing me to his firm partners as the love of my life, of quiet nights when he traced the scar on my shoulder from the car accident and swore he'd never let me feel alone again. All staged. My stomach twisted so hard I tasted bile. Guests laughed somewhere behind us, clinking glasses oblivious. Jake's best friend, Marcus, tall, always smiling, the one who had toasted us at Pride last June, watched from a bar with an expression I couldn't read. I turned and ran, down the metal stairs, past fairy lights, through the crowded street until my lungs screamed and I collapsed on a bench near the East River. The water reflected the Manhattan skyline like a cruel mirror. I pulled my knees to my chest, the same way I had as a scared 19-year-old coming out to my Ohio parents over a crackling phone line. Mama cried. Dad had gone silent for 6 months. Jake had been my safe harbor after that. Now the harbor was on fire. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I wandered into a 24-hour diner in Bushwick, ordered black coffee I didn't drink, and let the waitress refill it until dawn painted the windows gold. My phone buzzed nonstop. Jake, then my sister Leah in Chicago, then work Slack from the design studio. I silenced everything. Around 7 a.m., I finally opened the thread again and read every word. Jake had met Kay, who I later learned was his ex, a hedge fund guy named Kyle, 3 weeks before a first date. The plan: charm the openly gay son of a conservative Midwest developer who still sent me guilt checks every quarter. Use the relationship to look stable for partner track at the firm. Pocket the investment my dad had quietly wired for my future stability. Every "I love you" had a price tag. By noon, I was back in our apartment, packing while Jake was supposedly in court. I left the key on the counter beside the framed photo of us kissing at Fire Island. Under it, I scribbled one line: "Congratulations. You won the game." Then I dragged my suitcase to the subway and rode it aimlessly until I ended up at my friend Priya's place in Queens. She didn't ask questions. She just opened the door, handed me a beer, and let me cry on her couch until I passed out. That was day one. I told myself it was the end. I had no idea it was only the beginning of the longest awakening of my life. 3 weeks later, I stood in the Chicago O'Hare terminal hugging Leah, so tight she laughed and complained about my cologne. "You smell like a broken heart and airport coffee, little bro." She drove me to our childhood suburb in her beat-up Prius, windows down, Taylor Swift blasting like we were 16 again. Mom had made my favorite lasagna. Dad sat at the head of the table in the same flannel shirt he'd worn since I was born, jaw tight the way it got whenever the word gay hovered unspoken. They knew I'd left Jake. They didn't know why. I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Leah cornered me in the basement after dinner, the same room where I'd first shown her the rainbow pin I bought online at 14. "Spill, you look like you haven't slept since Obama was president." I told her everything: the text, the money, the performance. She listened without interrupting, then pulled me into a hug that smelled like lavender detergent and home. "He doesn't get to steal your story, Ethan. Rewrite it." The next morning, Dad asked me to help fix the fence out back. Hammering nails under the September sun, he finally spoke. "Your mother and we didn't do right by you back then, but we're trying." His voice cracked on the last word. I dropped the hammer, and for the first time in years, I let him see me cry. That night, I walked the neighborhood alone, past the high school where I'd hidden in the art room, past the diner where Jake and I had our first real date when he visited from law school. The memories hurt differently now, sharper, but also clearer. Back in New York, I threw myself into work. The studio landed a huge campaign for a queer-owned coffee chain. I poured every sleepless night into mood boards and typography that screamed resilience. Marcus texted once, "Jake's a mess. He wants to explain." I blocked the number. Priya dragged me to a rooftop yoga class in Long Island City, where the instructor kept saying, "Breathe into the space you're becoming." I rolled my eyes, but stayed for the whole hour. One Friday, I ran into Jake at the farmer's market near his building. He looked thinner, eyes hollow. "Ethan, please." It started as a plan, but then I fell. I swear. The words sounded so perfect, I almost believed them. Almost. I walked away without answering, heart hammering like it wanted to escape my ribs. That night, I downloaded a dating app for the first time since college, then immediately deleted it. I wasn't ready to be touched by anyone else's lies. Instead, I started running along the Hudson at sunrise. Each mile peeled away another layer of the version of Ethan who had needed Jake to feel worthy. By mile 5, I could almost breathe without tasting betrayal. Almost. Halloween in New York arrived loud and glittery. Priya dressed me as a glittery zombie because even the undead deserve sparkle. We hit a warehouse party in Bushwick where the bass shook my bones and the crowd was a beautiful mess of every letter in LGBTQ+. Halfway through the night, a guy in a perfectly tailored vampire cape offered me a drink. His name was Daniel. Architect. Dry humor. Eyes that actually stayed on mine when he spoke. We talked about brutalist buildings and bad horror movies until the lights came up. He walked me to the subway and asked for my number with zero pressure. I gave it. The next week we grabbed coffee in the West Village. Daniel listened to my Jake saga without trying to fix it. "Sounds like you're doing the hardest part already. Choosing yourself in public." His words landed soft, like they'd been waiting for the right moment. We started texting daily, nothing heavy, just memes and "how was your meeting" check-ins. It felt safe. Meanwhile, Jake's firm announced his promotion on LinkedIn. The photo showed him smiling beside Kyle, the same K. Caption: "Grateful for the journey and the people who shaped it." The hypocrisy burned so hot, I almost smashed my laptop. Instead, I screenshotted it and sent it to Leah with one word: proof. She replied with a string of fire emojis and "burn it all." Thanksgiving, I flew home again. This time, Dad hugged me first. Mom had baked an extra pumpkin pie, just because. Over dinner, I finally said the full story out loud. The table went quiet, then Mom reached across and squeezed my hand. "We love you, Ethan. Not the version we wanted, the real one." Dad nodded once, eyes shiny. Something inside my chest unclenched like a fist opening after years. Back in the city, Daniel invited me to a quiet gallery opening. We stood in front of a massive painting of two men holding hands across a broken bridge. He leaned in and whispered, "I don't want to be anyone's bridge. I just want to walk beside you if you'll let me." I didn't kiss him that night, but I let him hold my hand on the walk home, and for the first time the touch didn't feel like danger. Christmas lights went up along Fifth Avenue. I bought a tiny tree for Priya's apartment and decorated it with rainbow bulbs. On Christmas Eve, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "I never deserved you. I'm sorry. Jake." I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then deleted the thread forever. The city snow fell soft outside the window, and I realized I wasn't cold anymore. February brought the worst blizzard in a decade. Daniel and I were snowed in at his cozy apartment in Harlem, eating homemade chili and watching old episodes of The Office. He had string lights up year-round because life's too short for seasonal happiness. We talked about everything: his conservative Texas upbringing, my Ohio silences, the way both of us had once shrunk ourselves to be loved. When the power flickered, he pulled a blanket over us and said, "I'm not in a rush, Ethan. I just want to keep showing up honestly." I kissed him then, slow and certain, and it felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. Work exploded. I got promoted to senior designer and pitched a campaign centered on chosen family. The client loved it so much they flew me to LA for the shoot. On the plane, I scrolled old photos and deleted every one of Jake without hesitation. In LA, I stood on Venice Beach at sunset, waves crashing, and called Leah. "I think I'm healing," I told her. She hooped so loud the person next to me on the boardwalk smiled. Back home, Jake showed up at my studio unannounced. Security almost escorted him out, but I waved them off. We sat on the curb outside like we used after late meetings. He looked wrecked. Kyle blackmailed me with old photos from law school. I was scared. I used you to look stable, but every laugh we shared was real. I swear, part of me wanted to believe him. The bigger part, the one that had run 5 miles every dawn, knew better. "You made your choices, Jake. Now I'm making mine. Goodbye." I stood up and walked away without looking back. The wind felt cleaner. That night, Daniel cooked dinner and listened while I recounted the conversation. He didn't offer advice, just held me until I fell asleep feeling lighter than I had in months. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms in Central Park. Daniel and I had our first real fight, over something stupid like pineapple on pizza, but we talked it through on a bench near the Bethesda fountain. He said, "I'm proud of how far you've come. You don't flinch anymore when someone sees us holding hands." I realized he was right. I had stopped scanning crowds for judgment. June Pride weekend turned the city into a rainbow explosion. Daniel and I marched with Priya and Leah, who had flown in as a surprise. We carried a banner that read, "Healing is the new fierce." Halfway down Fifth Avenue, I spotted Jake in the crowd. Our eyes met. He raised a hand, not a wave, more like surrender, then disappeared into the throng. I didn't feel triumph or rage, just quiet closure, like closing the last page of a book I never wanted to reread. At the festival stage, I danced with Daniel under spinning disco balls, sweat and glitter everywhere, and for the first time I understood what joy without performance felt like. Later we sat on the grass, eating overpriced tacos while fireworks lit the sky. He leaned over and said, "Whatever comes next, we ride it together, honestly." I kissed him right there in front of everyone and didn't care who watched. The following Monday, I met with a therapist recommended by Priya. We unpacked everything. The childhood silence, the desperate need to be chosen, the way I had confused love with rescue. She asked one question that stuck. Who is Ethan when no one is watching? I started answering that question every single day, through morning runs, through late-night sketches, through saying no when something didn't feel right. My parents visited New York for the first time since I came out. We went to the Statue of Liberty, ate halal food in Times Square, and Dad even took a selfie with a drag queen. Mom cried happy tears on the ferry back. "We're so proud of the man you became without us knowing how." The words healed something deep I didn't know was still bleeding. One quiet Sunday, Daniel and I drove upstate to a cabin. No Wi-Fi, just trees and a fireplace. We talked about the future, not plans, just possibilities. I told him I was still scared sometimes. He smiled and said, "Good. Means you're alive." That night, under a sky full of stars, I realized I wasn't waiting for anyone to complete me anymore. I was already whole. 1 year to the day after that rooftop kiss, I stood on the same Brooklyn rooftop, alone this time. The party was smaller, just close friends. Daniel was inside, helping Priya with a playlist. I looked out over the city that had watched me break and rebuild and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for the storm." Jake never reached out again. I heard through mutual friends he left the firm and moved to Boston for a fresh start. I wished him peace, genuinely. Some betrayals teach you boundaries. Others teach you grace. I kept both. Daniel stepped outside and slipped his arms around me from behind. "Ready for the next chapter?" I turned, kissed him softly, and answered, "I've been writing it all year." We danced slow under the same string lights. No audience, no performance. Just two men who had chosen truth over comfort and found something stronger. Later that night, I opened my laptop and typed the first line of a new story. Not about betrayal, about becoming. The city hummed below us, alive and forgiving. I finally understood. Love isn't the absence of pain. It's the courage to stay open after the pain has taught you who you really are. In the end, this story isn't about Jake or Daniel or even the city lights. It's about Ethan choosing to stop auditioning for someone else's approval and starting to direct his own life. The lesson is simple yet stubborn. Betrayal can shatter the version of you that needed saving. But if you let it, it also frees the version that was always enough. My gentle advice? When a mask slips and the text messages glow, don't beg for the lie to stay pretty. Walk toward the truth even when your knees shake. The person waiting on the other side of that walk is someone you'll actually like waking up beside every morning. Healing isn't loud or cinematic. It's quiet mornings, honest conversations, and the soft click of a door closing on who you used to be so the real you can finally step forward. Keep stepping. The view gets brighter.